Welcome to the Fly Culture Podcast, bringing you interviews, reviews and fishing tips. Here's your host, Pete Tigers.
Hi everyone, this is Pete Tigers and this is the latest Fly Culture Podcast. We're recording this 2 days into the coronavirus lockdown. But what we're going to try and do with this, our thoughts are with everyone right now, but what we're going to try and do this is keep this upbeat and if we're still in lockdown when this one actually goes out, that you're all keeping well and keeping in good spirits. And I hope this gives you an opportunity to take you to the next best place and take you to the river. And I'm really pleased that I've got James Gilbraith with me, who is a passionate angler. He's an author of 2 books, Terminal Chancer and the recently published Hooked on Hope. They revolve around his friendships and fishing, mainly on his home river, the Ribble, but beyond that. The books, I've read both of them and bought both of them, thoroughly enjoyed them. They're really different. They're a breath of fresh air. And if you know James, he's really, really funny, knows and loves his fishing, cares about the friendships as well, and the time he spends on the water in the company of friends. So it's really great to have you here, James. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay, considering, Pete. You know, it's unprecedented, isn't it, what's going on? And we just hope that we all don't end up going crazy and coming out of this like slavering basket cases in 3 months' time. So I'm just, you just got to keep on keeping on, haven't you?
I'm starting to go slightly feral now, and I've not shaven for a bit, and my hair's out of control. I'm going to, I think, probably come out of this looking like a miniature balding Sasquatch at the end of it.
Well, I thought you're so confident, aren't you, with, I'm going to do homeschooling, it's going to be brilliant. Honestly, I lasted about 3 hours yesterday with the kids, 1 8, 1 11, and they were working better without me than when I intervened and tried to help. So what we're going to be all like in 2 or 3 months' time, I do not know. They're going to be like experts in bushcrafts. You know, all I can do is teach them how to make a bow and arrow and a catapult, you know.
You never know. You might need that further down the line as well, mightn't you?
Well, we've all seen enough episodes of Waking Dead, haven't we, to see how this could pan out.
Yeah. I know in the first issue of Fly Culture, if you remember, we had Ben Jailer wrote about the zombie apocalypse and how he coped with that.
Yeah, that was a good piece. And when you were reading it, you thought, he's gone too far here. This could never happen. And then fast forward 12 months and we're in it.
So before all this happened, I know we've been in touch and we've been talking and stuff, and you've been hitting the Ribble. How's it going? How's the fishing been?
Well, we've still yet to record our first Springer, so that tells a tale. To my knowledge, nobody's had one yet. We've had good, because of all the floods, the opportunities to go fishing haven't been perfect. But when it has been perfect, there's been a decent amount of people on the river, but no one's had one yet, in a nutshell. And there's been the colour to drop out of the river, because we've had so much water, is taking ages to drop out, whether that's to do with what's on the fields and all sorts of stuff. But where it would drop a bit clearer, especially for fly, it's just been having a tin. You sometimes think you're just going through motions, don't you? So we've still been going through the motions and fishing. I've had probably about 12 hours at it, that's all. And we're just all waiting for opportunities. We were all waiting for the weather to turn. And then we've just had the news that, rightly so, all the rivers have closed and there's not going to be any more fishing for a while. So we just have to wait and see. But no, optimism was high. Especially seeing there's been some amazing fish caught in Scotland, hasn't there, over last week? You know, on the Findhorn, some big springers. So it lights the fire, doesn't it? The fuse is lit, so you itching to get at it. And the thing about spring fishing, as you know, is that you think every fish is good. Well, every fish is going to be a belter. So you really, and because the two things, you've waited in all winter, you've had a rest, and then you're ready to go. So it's been a bit of it's been all optimism and very little reward at the moment. But priorities are, you've got to get health right first, or you can't enjoy anything.
Yeah, it was interesting. I know we were trying to tie this podcast up, and I kept saying to you, Bud, that we've got some fishable water at the moment, so we're going to have to delay it a few days. And
Yeah.
I hit it pretty hard. And like you say, optimism, and particularly because of this winter. And I'm a big grayling fisher as well over winter, and I've barely done any. And so the chance when the river came right to hit it was fantastic. And I was fishing like a steelheader, with a Skagit line and T11, T14 tips and great big intruder flies. It felt kind of cool, and it's worked for me in the past, but just hitting the river has been fantastic. And then given what looks like is probably going to happen, and like you say, we've got to rightly stay off the rivers right now. My trout fishing, because I love them both. I love, actually, my passion really is trout, followed very closely by salmon. But the trout for me on my home river don't really start doing anything until April. And I think, well, I'm probably going to miss the Granham hatch. That's probably not going to happen. I've come to terms with that. That's fine. But I might be hitting the river just at the right time for trout, with mayfly starting to come out and stuff like that. So I'm trying to be glasses half full about it and thinking, well, there's some pretty good stuff to come. The funny thing, I think, is that I think we're all going to have really nice looking gardens, well decorated houses. Housing market's going to explode, I reckon.
Yeah, well, when we come out the end of this, when we get back to whatever normal is, but we're all going to be having a massive sense of enthusiasm. One of the byproducts of all this could be that people start focusing on what's important in life, what is truly important in life. And you remember listening to old timers going, as long as you've got your health, whenever you listen to somebody in the 60s and 70s and 80s, they're never saying they wish they'd worked harder, not, or I wished I'd done, they always want to have to cultivate what's important, the things you can't buy. So maybe it'll give everyone a sense for living a little bit slower, doing things that are a bit more sustainable, and focusing more on what makes them happy holistically as people. So I think hopefully that'll be a really nice byproduct to come out of this, because if there's one thing that is coming out of it, is that everyone's having a chance to come up for air, because it's out of their hands. It's not something they can control. So, you never know. Every cloud has a silver lining, and let's hope that all this lot will be loads of people really reveling in the outdoors and taking things a bit easier, and realising that it's not all about how hard you work or how much money you have.
Yeah, fair point. Very, very fair point. And I hope as well is that, I always say to friends, and my daughter's 29 or coming up 29 in April, and everything goes so quickly, and being able to spend a little bit more time in the short term with your children as well makes you realise how quickly everything actually goes. And I hope people do savour and enjoy those moments. It must be a complete bloody nightmare at times with homeschooling and everything else, but those moments don't last very long.
No, and here we are. We never asked for this. So all I can do is we turn it into, a little bit of entertainment and see how it goes. There's no right and no wrong. As long as the kids are entertained and happy and not bored, that's the main thing for me. But absolutely taking it one day at a time. I've been doing online exercise classes with kids, and I could hardly walk yesterday. Yeah. So I'm either going to come out at the end of this like McVicker, Roger Daltrey in the film McVicker, when he's doing press-ups in his cell. I'm coming out of this a 2 stone lighter, 10 years younger, and ready to go. So the river better be right, because I'm going to hit it hard and I'm going to be fit as a flea, or I'm going to be coming out of it like Elvis. I'm ready to have a heart attack, because
is that your jumpsuit stage?
Yeah, the jumpsuit. Yeah, not the comeback special. The dead on a toilet stage.
So let's. I think we've covered that nicely, and we like we said, we wanted to keep it upbeat and everything else. And you mentioned about the river a little bit there. tell us about, I've not fished the Ribble. I know a little bit about it. I have friends like yourself and some others who fish it. Tell me, as somebody who's not seen it, a little bit about the Ribble, what it means to you, and how much you love it.
Well, that's a massively broad question, but it is a fabulous river running through, obviously, the Ribble Valley. It's about 65 miles long. The lower reaches of it are prolific for coarse fish, absolutely prolific for coarse fish. Some of the bag catches that have gone on this winter have been phenomenal from friends of mine, from dace, roach, chub, barbel, carp, pike, whatever you want to focus on is there. In 2018, we recorded 440 salmon caught, which was about 40 down on the previous year. So we average between 400 and 500, on a good year 600. That's when we. But you need the weather conditions because it's a spate river. You need the water, or else they can't come. So everything depends on the weather that we're having. A good year or a bad year. So when we have a dry summer, prolonged drought, not many salmon get caught. Same as most rivers. But when we have rain where it tops up every 2 or 3 weeks, or stays where you've got a chance to actually go and get them at a decent fishable level, prospects are always good. When the river recently, we're always counting how many fish. We're mad, aren't we, on figures, counting and how many have been through the counter and how many. We've got a counter at Waddow in Clitheroe where I live, and everyone's always, how many fish have been through the counter? And there's not a lot you can do if we've not got the weather. But when we've got plenty of water, you've a chance of catching a salmon. You really have, most months of the year. So it's good like that. I mean, and what it means to me is it means everything. I used to live in Blackburn, which is 10 miles away from the River Ribble, and I moved to Clitheroe so I could be like half a mile away from it. So that's what it means to me. I fish it most days. I fish it every lift, definitely. I usually in spring I have a couple of hours before work. Sometimes I'll have my lunch on the river and have an hour there. When I'm commuting over to my antiques pitch in Preston, I'll fish at Preston on my lunch hour. So it's never far from my thoughts. And if I can, I try and fish it every day. Even though sometimes you think it's futile, but there is no futility in salmon fishing. You've got to either you've got to get it. If you don't get it, that's fine. There's plenty of other fish in that river that you can fish for and catch whenever you go. If you want to catch a barbel, you can catch one within half an hour. And I'm not being glib about that, but you can if you know what you're doing. A salmon, on the other hand, takes some pursuing, and that's what fascinates me.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right about getting it. And I've got friends who are very fine trout anglers who don't quite get the salmon thing. And I respect both sides of the argument, having a foot in both camps, as it were. But it's all about that just thousands of casts, and then the moment that line goes tight, all of that's forgotten, isn't it? All the hard times, all the cold, all the wet when you're feeling miserable. I just don't feel that when I'm fishing and swinging flies for salmon, that it's just worth it for that one pull. And that's why I love it so much. And it's the futility to me that makes it really interesting and makes me love it just for that moment.
Yeah, that I completely agree. That sense of anticipation is everything. And that starts when you're putting the rod in the car, to when you're driving to the river, to when you're walking down to the river, when you've picked a beat and you know the weather's in your favour and the conditions are perfect, and then somehow you're never ready. When that line goes tight, you are still never ready, even though it's all you think about. The anticipation of that is, I can go, let's say 100 times a year. I always say 100 times a year. I don't know how many times I go. I don't keep a diary. But I go a lot. And even if you go 100 times a year, you are going to come into contact with 3 fish, 4 fish, 5 fish. On the fly rod might be only 2 fish in a year. Now, no other anglers go through that. When I go stillwater trout angling, I'm going to be into a trout within 20 minutes or an hour on an average day. All right, if it's summer and it's hard, it can be very challenging. Brown trout fishing on the River Ribble, I can catch brown trout seemingly when I want. Not really massive ones. I'm not in a specimen hunter category of trout angler, but they're there. If I wanted to set up, if I wanted to take my kids barbel fishing, which I do now and again, we always catch one. So you cannot say that, and you've got to gravitate to love angling that much, so that all the pieces of the jigsaw fit for salmon fishing, and you can only get to that when you've done all the rest. And I still love all the rest, but when the pictures of the puzzle is made, and you can focus in on it and zero in on it, that is what is the contagious element of salmon fishing. The thing that you've caught something that's so hard to do, and you've got to have such a stamina for it, haven't you? You can't just rock up and think you're going to get one. That's just not going to happen. You've got to put the hours in, and you've got to enjoy putting the hours in. There's not really blank sessions, is there? There's just a session where, you either have come into contact with one or you haven't.
And I think, thinking about it while you've just been saying that as well, what it does is really capture the difference between catching and fishing. And, those long hours of nothing happening. And I don't mind not catching one in our river. I know we've talked about it before, but my river returned 84 salmon in total last year. I managed a couple and Emma had one. So, we were pretty happy. But there are many, many hours. I put a lot of days in for nothing, but it didn't bother me in the slightest.
No, because the reward is that magical moment of actually finally coming into contact with someone, isn't it? I mean, it's almost like you to someone else who is just interested in catching straight away. It must sound, sadomasochism, but it isn't like that at all. It's just such a natural thing to be in it. And even when you're sat at home, you're thinking, what height's the river? I'll give you an example now of salmon fishing. In late February, my mate rings me up and he says, Davey down at Preston has just seen some fish coming into the river. I don't know how he's seen these fish. I don't even know really who he means. But I'm on the phone, I'm going, where? He goes, down behind Tickle Trout, which is a hotel near the M6, where the river goes right underneath it. So I'm on the phone and I'm excited. I'm in Clitheroe. Who's Davey? Oh, he's a member at club down there, a walking dog. He's seen a pod of fish come in. I've been fishing up river 25 years. I've never seen a pod of fish come in. I've heard of people. I've seen a few running fish now and again. But now all I'm picturing in my head is like porpoising. So, where? Spring, and there's a massive one. There's a massive one's just jumped out right in front of Davey. Who's Davey? This lad, it don't matter. Anyway, and then my mate says to me, where do you think it is now? This big fish that he's seen. What kind of nut job, right, rings up somebody? I'm 30 miles away from him making the phone call. He's never met Davey. He's seen it on a text message to another in a WhatsApp group. Now he's ringing me, and then we spend half an hour hypothesising where this fish, that could be a figment of his imagination, is in the river, right? So I'm going, who knows where it could be? There's 60 miles of river, perfect running water. It could be anywhere. Well, where do you think it is now? And then he goes, I think it's at Boulderstone, which is just above the Tickle Trout. And I said, No, it'll have gone through there. Like I know where it is, like I've an idea. But next day, where am I? I'm at Ribchester, and I'm imagining where the big fish is, and I'm thinking it could any minute now. That's how deluded a salmon angler is, right? And that is just a phone call. It prompted me to drive 20 miles to the river, go down to Ribchester, fish through there like a lunatic, for a fish that probably hasn't been seen. It's probably just seen, it could have been a duck landing on water. You know what I mean? It probably hasn't known who's Davy. But all of us, and it's up there with, Lamont rang me last year, and he said that he saw a fish, and it were that big, you could hear it swimming. That's salmon anglers when nothing else matters. Nothing else. That's all you're interested in. Everything else is just waiting. Lip service.
It's what keeps you going, isn't it? And I know, I like you watch the heights, and I'm thinking, well, that's too high, but sorry, if there's some clarity, I'm going down there.
Yeah.
And you just do, and you're probably going to get a kicking, but I don't care, and it's enough to be there. And you never know, do you? They don't read the how many fish have gone through the counter. They don't look at the height. If it looks like it's right for them to go, they'll have a go, won't they?
Absolutely. You've just got to go fishing, haven't you? And that's, if you love it, it doesn't matter because you love it. So it's not like you're thinking about it. We've all met anglers who give up, don't bother anymore. And if it's not for them, it's not for them. That you've got to do what you love, haven't you? And
yeah.
But I'll tell you what, there's a lot of lads who are just like us, who are on the river, and that's all they're bothered about. They do a bit of sea trout fishing and stuff like that, but there's nothing else does it for them. And it's a funny thing, that, isn't it? That there's nothing else floats your boat quite like catching a wild run, Atlantic salmon, from your local river. I went to the River Spey last year, and I'd never been before. And I've written 2 books on salmon fishing, but I'm not an expert on salmon fishing. I wouldn't even dream of pretending to be. I wanted to capture, how I feel about salmon fishing and make it authentic to the reader. Anyway, but I went up to the River Spey, and we stood on a bridge in April, and in 20 minutes we'd seen 15 salmon, which is more than I'd seen in a year on Ribble, and I'm not joking, And then it got even better. I caught one second cast the morning after when we actually went fishing. I could not believe my luck. We ended up with 7 for the week, and between me and my friends in our WhatsApp group, there's about 15 of us, and I think we had 42 fish from the Ribble last year, between 15 of us, and everyone is very keen as mustard, and the fishing, everyone drives each other on, so they're fishing a lot, but you've got to love it. You've got to love it, all its nuances, and that's, it either connects with your psyche and how you're wired up as a person, or not. And it really does. You might be able to tell that. It really does connect with me.
Just a little bit. So let's, the passion's clearly coming through, and let's go back a bit then. And how did salmon fishing come to you? Where did that really start for you? The salmon aspect of it.
Well, when we were 11 at secondary school, we were all. I met another 6 or 7 lads who really loved coarse fishing, and we all took it on ourselves just to go coarse angling round Blackburn, and we did that right up until 16, fishing on various ponds all around Blackburn. So I just knew it was for me. I just loved how I could be absorbed by it completely, and I always have been. I love sport. I've played football. I play a little bit of cricket now and again, but I play football passionately, and I've been playing right up until I still play now. I'm 52. So I love sport, absolutely sports mad. But the one thing that has been the constant through my life, good times, bad times, happy times and painful times, has been the river or fishing. And that took us up to, I still have the same bunch of friends now, and you just graduate through the different gears of fishing, don't you? So we're all fishing on ponds, tying rods to our bikes and riding all over Blackburn, loving it. And then we started fly fishing when we were about 16. So we were going to still waters with really cheap rods that we bought from Woolworths. And, you know, there were loads of fishing tackle shops in Blackburn then. So there were no shortage of tackle. And all we had was time and each other. So you just went and you entertained each other everywhere you went. So we then really got hooked onto still water trout fishing. I mean, from being, obviously you go in pubs and you're having relationships and everything, but in between it's punctuated, you know, with, hey, now we've got jobs and we've got a bit of income, we can get out, we can go and pay for 5 hours on stocks or a fishery called Drake's Head, or we fished everywhere around Lancashire. So we've got that sense of freedom, and we were still water bonkers for rainbow trout, you know, and brown trout. At this point, none of us are fishing on the river, really, but we were just, you know, we were doing 15 hours a week on stocks, you know, fishing and loving it, absolutely loving it, and learning all the time and becoming really good at still water fly fishing for trout. We get then to about 1991, 92, and there's a couple of lads who've done all that, but they're older than us, and they drink in the same pub as we did. And they were always talking about salmon fishing, and it seemed alien to us because of everything we've just been talking about, that, you know, you're not guaranteed to catch. You know, that was an alien concept. That, what do you mean you're not going to, what's the point going if we're not going to catch one? And this lad called Peter Wilkinson had a dab hand at being able to get amongst salmon, and it was because he'd spent so many hours on the river and he knew what he was doing. So he'd come in the pub one day around about 93, and he had 2 silver salmon that he got that morning from the River Ribble. And I were absolutely blown away by this. So when he'd explained, and he then transferred the salmon over onto his bar tab for best bitter, Thwaites' best bitter, that was also a revelation that it was somehow a currency. You know, that also, you know, when you're struggling in Blackburn and you've got no money, all of a sudden you're thinking, right, hang on, right. So he was going up to the River Loon at that time, and he was fishing on the EA bit at Caton. So he convinced me to come and tag along, and, you know, I wasn't going to go with a salmon rod and all that lot, a fly rod, sorry. It was spinning, so it was accessible. I didn't have to learn a big, if he'd have put a 15-foot double hander in front of me, I'd have just made a mess of it, so it wouldn't have been enjoyable. But because it was just spinning, you could get the nuances of it. And what I mean, the nuances, the urgency that it's going to be right tomorrow. It's not going to be right the day after. You've got to go now. And I'd never found that in fishing before, because you just go, you know. You go to a still water and just go fishing, and you've got a good prospect of catching one, depending on the month. You know, July, I've always struggled on still waters in July because of the temperatures. But so this sense of urgency, it took some time to relay that to me. But once I understood, you know, the river had to be right, it had to be the right month, and it got me going up to the back end of the River Loon. And the first time he took me, I managed to catch one. You know, lottery ticket moment. I caught a £15 beautiful, fresh salmon from the River Loon. And I'd never felt anything like the fight that I'd had on that rod, and the fact that all these people had turned up all at the same time. You know, the day before, the river were empty, and then for them 4 hours, when they knew there were going to be some fish coming through, it was packed, and it was just really an odd scenario. So Peter Wilkinson introduced me to that and he was the master of it, so that was how I got into salmon fishing, through Peter Wilkinson, and that'll have been about 93, 94.
And so because I go on my little home river, we only have spinning for the first month of the season. Then that's it. It's fly only sort of thing. And I don't care. I don't mind. People do, if it's in the rules, I don't have any issues with that. It's not a issue for me. So you caught your first salmon. That was on a spinning rod. Let's go to your first fly one. Do you remember that moment when that line went? Do you remember where you were? Was it on the Ribble? Was it on the Loon? Where were you when that happened, your first fly caught one?
Well, I never had much good fly water on the Loon. But on the river, on the River Ribble, I'm a member of 3 clubs, so I've got access to loads of great bits. I've got basically 15 mile of river to go at. And I was I'd just moved to Clitheroe, and it was my first ever salmon on fly. I caught hundreds spinning up until from 93 right up till 2010, and I couldn't put the spinning rod down because I just had confidence. I just felt confident, and every time I went through the motions with the fly rod. Like I'd have it set up next to the spinning rod, but I'd spend 6 hours spinning and an hour on fly rod. Kind of just for sure, really. And it was our chairman of our club at Ribbles, when I joined Ribblesdale Anglers in 2012, 8 years ago. He were fly only mad. He's a guy called Fred Hyam, and he writes the column in Trout and Salmon for the Ribble Report. And he's been fishing. He's done it. He's done everything that we've done. He's been right through all the cycles of salmon fishing and fishing. And he got to his later years, and he just decided he were going to be fly only. So he said, you've got to stick it out. You're never going to get one while you've got a spinning rod in your hand. You can't do it. So I started leaving the spinning rod in the car. That's what I had to do. I had to leave it in the car or not take it at all, and just take the fly rod. So around about 2012, I lost a couple. Never landed them. So that were really disappointing. So then 2013, I'm fishing on our beat in Clitheroe called Lowmore on the Ribble, and I'm fishing on behind a big weir called Waddow Weir. And I've worked all day, and I've just jibbed it down to fish after work at about 5 o'clock. And perfect running water, great conditions. There's another couple of members fishing below me, and just wham, I'm into the fish, and I somehow make it stick. But when you hook one in the weir, you've got to run down this rocky outcrop, down about another 3 pools, and then land it further down the river. And it was by far and away the most exciting moment I'd ever had, because you had to do that to get out of the flow of the river to actually get in a bit where you could land it. And I was just so elated, Pete. I was so elated. I mean, I still spin and I bait fish now. But the thing about fly fishing is how flexible you are in your movement. All you've got's a fly rod and a pocket full of bits. And it's great, isn't it? It's low. You're not having to lug loads of gear around, are you? You can move around in your own pace, and I love that, marching about and fishing pools and that. So that were it. I'm not fly only by any long chalk. I haven't got that luxury of a river that allows me to do that. I've got to fish the conditions if I want to get some fishing in. But that was the first one, 2014. So, and every year since then, I've managed about 4 a year from the Ribble on the fly, and it's really, really gratifying. And it's hard, like you were just saying with the tips, and you've got to. It's not just one setup and that's you. You've got to be able to change tactics, haven't you?
Yeah, you got to mix it up the whole time. And, the podcast I did with Paul Richardson was really interesting, and how he was talking about, don't change your pattern, change the depth and everything else that you're actually fishing via tips or weight of your fly or whatever
Well,
it
the
is.
day after that podcast, and while I was listening to it, I'm thinking, oh, right, okay. And he was a tackle designer, wasn't he? Designing reels and stuff. And now I'm thinking, right, okay, this guy's never been on my river here where there's no salmon in it. Anyway, fast forward the next day, I've got a fast sink tip on. I've got a big heavy tube on, and I'm like thinking, I want this 6 inches off bottom, bringing it round in a big arc, So and I've been fishing like that anyway. You've got to do that. But it made me. I had one slow sink tip. I've now got a selection ever since listening to that podcast. Airflow must have been inundated.
There you go, Paul. If you're listening, it's worked on somebody. So thank you for that. And I was thinking about when we first hooked up, and I reckon it was either 4, 5, or 6 years ago, and you were just starting to get your first book, Terminal Chancer, together. And at the time, I was running a free not-for-profit online magazine called Eat, Sleep, Fish. And you contacted me and said, I'm writing this book, have a look at this. And I had a look at it, and I just thought the first word was one of those, wow, because it was so different. And to me, it represented salmon fishing as I do it, in that it was in the company of friends. I love the themes with music in there as well. Very, very funny, well observed, but it was just different, and it represented real salmon fishing to me. Was that one of your aims to do with that book? And we're going to talk a little bit more about it in a second, but was that what you wanted to do? Is that how that sort of process came about for you and putting the book together?
Well, it's really gratifying that you said that. I mean, the one thing I wanted it to be was authentic, Pete. Everything I read, when you're reading trout and salmon and you're reading loads of books on, they're all a bit perfect. And that just did not reflect my life as an angler, and I wanted to get some of that authenticity across in the book. So that was a definite theme that I wanted to capture. Yeah, so I just wanted it to be authentic. I wanted it to be a reflection of what it feels like for most anglers who love the outdoors, who feel a part of nature, and who want to, who really feel that rhythm of nature, the enthusiasm and the energy that goes into it when you're just going fishing. Because to a non-angler, what's worse than when you just said to someone, I'm into fishing, and they automatically think that you sat on a basket in 1962 on a canal, smoking a woodbine, watching a float. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that. But that they do not know what it is like to be an angler. So I wanted to get that across. And I wanted it to get across in a funny, humorous way. And I wanted it to capture the spirit of and the soul of fishing, really. And I didn't want it to sound pious.
Yeah. So tell us about the basis, because the book is tied around your friends trying to catch a fish while they're supposed to be at work, and you've got a trophy and stuff. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
There's 3 narratives running through the book that I think that are the narratives. There's I want to take the clock face off angling and show the inner workings of it, right? So so you can get to see the mechanism. So that's one of the things running through it. Then there's the person who feels like he's in a dead end job, disillusioned, wondering about his life clock ticking down and how he's not fulfilled creatively, and how he's having a kind of midlife crisis, meanwhile thinking there must be more to life than this. And then the third and probably the most important thing that runs through the book is I'm a glass half full guy, right? And you've got to be if you want to be a salmon fisherman, really. So it's probably one of the things that we were talking about earlier that connects us. You've got to be a glass half full guy. So I wanted to convey that and show the friendship, the passion, the love, and trying to live life on your own terms. So those three things are the themes running right the way through it. And the conduit to that is salmon fishing, So hopefully that comes through in the book. That's what I wanted to get across, The world doesn't need another how-to book that's preachy or telling everyone about techniques. We can do that on an online forum or on 20 million YouTube videos. What they can't convey is what I've written in those two books, and hopefully that gives someone a sense of entertainment and that's all it is. It's entertainment, but I want it to connect with people who might feel in a similar way as I did while I was writing them, and continue to write them, Sometimes you're meant to feel guilty about what you love doing, and I didn't feel that. But something switched in me when I turned 40. Suddenly the countdown clock is on, and you worry about your legacy, and you worry about your impact, and you worry about how you want to spend the last years of your life. So hopefully that comes across that sometimes you've got to be brave and do the things that you never thought you could do.
I think it definitely comes across, and the things that you're talking about, and it's so heartfelt and funny as well, and it's just lovely to read a book that you can empathize with as well, but makes you laugh out loud. And there's not many books that have done that, and I genuinely mean that. I'm not just saying it because I'm talking to you now. There are very few, and I can't think of many salmon fishing books or fishing books that make you laugh out loud. And that's the lovely thing. And you can imagine yourself with yourself, Lamont, on the river, and what you're experiencing, and the way you're talking to each other is just fantastic. When you did this then, so was that an easy process? Did you find it flowed really easily, or did you have to really think the thing through really deeply and go through everything, rewriting chapters? Was it an easy process?
Well, it was a process. I always wrote things, but I never thought they'd go anywhere or lead to anything. I eventually sat down one day and I looked at I probably had about 12,000 words, probably about what you'd consider 3 or 4 articles. And then I thought, this could be the spine of a book if I was willing to put the work in and the effort. And I didn't find writing easy. I find talking very easy, as you can tell, but putting it down is a different thing for me. Academically, I wasn't brilliant. I didn't enjoy school, etc. But once I started writing it in 2012, 2013. And once I knew, the key for me was getting the structure and making it about a season. Then it all made sense then. So I'm going to do a book, and it's going to be about from February to the end of October and everything in between. And then that gave me the structure. That's the bare bones of it. So that was like a eureka moment for me. But writing it, at the time while I was writing it, I had a young family. I had a full-time job. The cracker factory is a metaphor for an unhappy place of work, that's solely sapping your spirits. In actual fact, the cracker factory was a college in Blackburn that I'd worked for 16 years as a support worker, communicating for deaf students and assisting other students to be included in class who may have underlying things like Asperger's and autism or a learning difficulty. So that was a job that I did for 16 years. But so while I was doing that, I then somehow we'd got into starting a music festival, which we were running every summer. We started out behind a pub, but this thing had grown. It had snowballed to frightening dimensions, really. It had gone from a 12 grand event that were on back of a fag packet to a £70,000 event, and we still weren't making any money, but it was taking all the time. The event was called Cloud Spotting. So we're doing that at night, and then I don't know why, I must have been like a lunatic, really. But then I thought, well, I'm going to write a book as well. So as well as doing all this and booking all the bands and having a full-time job and a young family, I started writing the book. So I wrote the book from 11 o'clock at night to like 3 a.m. every night, and it took me about 4 months to get it all together. And then it was, I didn't have an editor, I didn't have any money for an editor, and I didn't have any connections to the publishing world. So it all seems really foreign. I mean, you must have more experience now from your journey, but I knew nothing. I was just a bloke who wrote about fishing, who went fishing. I had no contact to the publishing world or anything. So it was like a snowball, so I got it all out, and I got it out as fast as I could, really. Obviously, things were rewritten now and changed, but you got so far into an article, you just think into a chapter, sorry. How far is this going to go? Now, what can I do to make it whole and fit and round it off and finish it? So, yeah, it was all a massive learning curve for me, but I can't tell you what it did for my self-esteem to actually complete it. It was really uplifting and tremendously rewarding.
And it must have been amazing, and I know we have the same when the magazine turns up here, when those first boxes of books turn up, and you see that the thing that you spend countless hours on a computer writing about actually coming to life. And then you get the next thing is when you're letting people know it is alive and being able to tell people about it. And was that for you, the promotion of the book? How did you find that in this environment that we live in now with social media and everything else? How did you find that?
Well, it's a double-edged sword. It's so accessible, you think it's going to be easy, and that can be your first mistake, to think that. And I certainly thought, well, I didn't really try and get it published because I didn't know which route to go down, so I didn't waste any time doing that because I didn't have time to pursue it. And basically, when you've written it, it were no good someone turning around going, oh, nobody wants it. I thought, well, I might as well publish it myself. So the self-publishing thing is brilliant, but the publicity side of it is really hard, really, really hard. And you need advocates. You need so many advocates to. It's all right thinking, oh, it's going to go viral. It's not. It's not, it's just not. You might get 5 people who write a review about it. You might get 6 or 7 people who share it on Facebook. But then 20 seconds later, there's something else for those people to look at. So being able to be self-critical and have it exactly how you want it is brilliant. But don't get me wrong. If a publisher came tomorrow and said, we want to take it over and do it, I'd jump at the chance because they know how to promote it. I'm not a promoter. There's not enough hours in the day to, do a press release and send it to all the news network agencies. I've written my second book. I've only just found out about that. I've got someone I've done my first press release last Monday, Pete, honestly. So I've given it to a mate of mine who runs a PR company who I never thought of even asking. I play poker with the guy I've done for 10 years. Never thought of asking him to what do I do now? So hopefully. But the Times, the Guardian, the Independent, every publication that matters doesn't know you exist. So that's just something you've got to come to terms with. I think I sold 450 copies of the first book, and I'm approaching selling just over 200 copies of the second book. But that's all done on my own steam and by generous people like yourself and other independent publishers who see some value in the writing and decide to tell their friends about it. But, even your own brother is only going to share it once. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. We're exactly the same. That we do self-publish. We just put it out there, and having been in the fishing industry a long time probably helps a little bit. But it's not in my nature to continually barrage people with stuff. But I've suddenly come round to the conclusion that you've actually got to do that, really, haven't you, to let people know you exist? Because you might have however many followers or likes or what, but there's still loads of people who don't know you exist.
No.
And that's been a similar sort of route for ourselves. And this is how this came about. I love talking to people about fishing like you. I love talking, and especially when it's about fishing. But it's a way of reaching people in a different way and helping other people along the line as well. And it is a really fascinating way. It's a fascinating world to look into. And I don't understand how people get 20,000 followers or whatever. I have no idea how that's worked. But we'll just keep chipping away at it. And it's the same with your book, that it's a great quality product that's great to read and you enjoy. And I think if something's good, that people will find it in time anyway. So, we're in it for the long haul. And like we were saying off mic, that I don't mind how many, as long as people enjoy it. I don't care how many people buy it. As long as we can keep printing it, that's all I care about with this. And I suspect you're very similar in that sense, really, aren't you?
Yeah, I write anyway. And the one thing that does keep you going is when you get people contacting you, and social media is good for that. If I'd have written a terrible book and everyone had told me it was terrible, and even my friends had gone, listen, Boo, you need to concentrate on something else, that'd be that. But everybody reads it, really, really connects with it and really enjoys it. So that keeps you going. And those positive reviews, you realise that, quality will win through in the end. And you know that if it ever, all you can have it is platform ready. So that if one day you do get that influential person who picks it up off a coffee table and reads it, all of a sudden you might have a really powerful ally or advocate who just shares it on their network once, and all of a sudden then someone else gets their attention sparked, they want to read it, they want to review it, and before you know it, you've got something going. So all you can do is have a quality product and something that's enjoyed. And both your magazine and my book, on the surface of it, certainly seems to be getting enjoyed by people. And people use one word to describe both things: Terminal Chancer, Hooked on Hope, and Fly Culture magazine: refreshing. So as long as people are finding it refreshing, then that's all right for me. It makes you plugging on.
And really interestingly, that you touched on in the first book, that being in a job that you weren't enjoying, and that book helped take your life in a different direction, didn't it? That you left the cracker factory and you went in that new direction.
Yeah, absolutely. The book became a self-fulfilling prophecy, Pete. It really did. And the success of me writing it finally gave me the confidence to leave my work, take voluntary redundancy, and try something else, and that would give me more flexibility and a bit more of a holistic work-life balance. And without that first book, I would never have took the plunge. I'd have been hanging on, and I'm so grateful to it for allowing me to do that. Not in a monetary fashion, in a monetary sense, but in a confidence sense. All of a sudden, you feel like you've done something that people enjoy that not everyone else can do. and that's fantastically gratifying, And so I left the cracker factory, took redundancy. I opened an antique shop in Clitheroe and ran that for 2 years until I was such a terrible shopkeeper, Pete. I used to close all the time. Whenever the river, I were in the middle of Clitheroe, so I were only ever 2 minutes from river. So the minute that the conditions were right, I used to put a thing in window that said happy hens lay more eggs, closed, and just go to the river. And people are going, I've come from Lancaster today to your shop and you weren't there. I'm going, oh, no. So after 2 years, I found this place in Preston that's staffed, so I can, it's about the same size as my shop. So I can put, I've got the same square footage in there as I had in the shop. So I can put all my stuff in there. It's open 7 days a week and I don't have to be there. Imagine that. So I just go and buy stuff, drop it off there, put it on the internet, drop it off there, and then write. I write every Thursday is my day for writing. So I stick to that religiously. And then for want of a better word, I'm pissing about on river.
So I was really excited to see at the back end of last year, early this year, that you had completed your second book. It was everything I hoped it would be. Similar sort of themes, but travelling a little bit wider. Certainly one of the themes that came through to me was the importance of family and friendship, but tied beautifully around music as well. I love your taste in music as well. Did you find that second book an easier process, or was it like in music, like second album syndrome? Was it a similar sort of case as that?
No, not really. I've got to say, it seems easier at the time. It took about 4 months to write, but 3 years to prepare for, if that makes sense. You're always writing in your notebooks. You're always wondering how things can work. You're always wanting to refine the process. And I just, all of a sudden, for 3 years, I wanted to just fish and then and get on with my business and everything. And then all of a sudden, I was just overwhelmed with an energy that now the time was right to do it. And I think I was kind of kicked into doing it by a few people saying, when's the next book? Why get on with it, So that really G'd me up. And then once I started, it was fantastic. It seemed to come pretty clearly and pretty easily, really. And I'm not one to think too much about it, what I'm doing. All my favourite writers always seem to flow and write things simply. So I'm never going to write Ulysses, by James Joyce. I'm going to write something that's. So it did come pretty easy to me the second time, but also you've got the confidence knowing that you can do it. And I got an editor this time, which really helped. So the process was really good, really enjoyable. And, my greatest critic is my wife. So she reads it as I'm writing it. And usually she's laughing her head off. So I know that, and she's never been fishing in her life. So I know if Anne-Marie gets it and it resonates with her, then I'm onto something.
Yeah, and that's really interesting that you say that about your wife, because it transcends fishing, really, doesn't it? Although that's the thread of it, along with some others as well. But I think even if you didn't fish, you'd probably enjoy it as well, because it's a lovely social commentary on your life around the river, really.
It is. The other thing that I really want people to connect with is the importance of balance. Nobody wants to die at work, and I want that to come through. That do what you love and love what you do. Be a part of your family and friends. Have a holistic, sustainable lifestyle, and that'll make you mentally well. It'll make you happy in the long run. So I wanted that to come through, and I think in today's modern world, there's a lot of people looking for that reassurance, or they're looking for that thing. Everyone's trying to get time, aren't they, Pete? Time. I've got to. If I make enough money, then I can have some time. When really, you've got it already. It's just how you prioritise the important things in your life, So I really wanted that to come across in the book, and I hope it does. I hope that's conveyed.
Yeah, and the piece about your trip to the Spey is beautifully told as well, and funny, and is really nicely written, and that goes for the whole book as well. And it must have been fun to see that one come out. Interesting, we were talking about and touching on social media and stuff like that, and the cover of the new one is quite eye-catching, which must work pretty well, like you say, for people flipping through on their phones and stuff like that, that it does stand out. I don't know if that was planned or not. If it was, genius. I like it anyway. But it's kind of an interesting cover as well.
Well, that's one of the byproducts of doing something for yourself like that is it can be a real adventure for you, can't it? So the daydreams of what it's going to look like and how it's going to turn out, they're all the lovely, easy things, aren't they? Fortunately, I've got loads of friends who were creative and who met a plethora of wonderful things, from films to music to designing furniture. This one particular friend is a designer, Ben Marsden, and he said that he'd do the book cover and he'd do it at mates' rates, so he'd only charge me half his going rate. So he came up with 3 different concepts for the cover, and it was I put it on Instagram and I let the vote. I've put it to the vote, and the majority of people pick the cover that's on it at the moment. So that was really good. But yeah, it's a fantastic killer cover. It's a brilliant image. And tongue in cheek, I sent him a mock-up of one I did, and it looked like it had been made by a mental person. So and he's going, I think I might be able to do a bit better than that, Boo. Really politely put, but. It's on there somewhere on the Instagram. My first mock-up of Hooked on Hope, and but yeah. So once I saw Ben's professional, slick, there was no going back. So he did that for me as a favour, and that's been brilliant. To have it looking, because you need things that can be shared quickly now, don't you? And that first 2 seconds, if it doesn't capture someone's imagination, they're gone onto something else, aren't they? So it has to be eye-catching, and it has to tell the story in a couple of seconds, really.
And it's certainly that. And, we're talking about the outside, but the inside as well is brilliant. And I genuinely, want people to read this book and both of them actually, because they're really different, interesting, and represent a large proportion of society and people like myself and my friends who fish. So I hope it gets every success that it deserves, both of them. You also run a podcast yourself as well, which gives people, the first thing I'm going to do actually when we finish doing this, now you've said it, is go on Instagram and find your cover. But the podcast as well allows you to you read a little bit from the books as well, so people get a sense of what it's all about. And I know, looking at some of these forums, you put it on there, or people have put it on there, sorry, and the feedback's been really, really good for it as well. And it's super slick, but gives people a really good sense of what the book's about if they're a little unsure as well.
Yeah, the podcasts have been really good to do. I do them with a friend of mine called Paul Nataraj, and he has a PhD in like audio media, so that helps. So I go and I read a chapter of the book, and then he adds these sound effects. He adds, like a mixtape to it, and it's got that feel. It's like an abstract. Like, we want it to be like a collage, really, of the books. So there's loads of competition, isn't there, for podcasts now? But so we wanted to do something a little bit different and a little bit eclectic that reflected our own personalities. So they're full of humour. It is, where he gets some of his, when we get sued, we're going to get sued. The lawsuit is going to be massive. You can't just steal Sergio Leone's music or Clint Eastwood's sound bites, but we have done. We've nicked loads of stuff. We've used, so it's a proper mixtape of the podcast, and it's hugely entertaining. So to do them, we've done 2. The third one should be done in the next couple of weeks. I've read it. I've been and read the chapter. So we're just going to keep going, and we're just doing it for kicks, really, because you've got to express yourself, haven't you? And self-expression is really important. So, and the other thing is that we watch and we consume so much media, don't we, Pete? Right? That sometimes it's bewildering how things have even got made, or things how have been remade. So why not? Why not throw something else into the mix? Why not have your own voice and do something that you feel passionately about that can give other people a bit of entertainment, So yeah, it's a good insight into the books, certainly. It's a good insight into the books. And some of the compliments that we've had are unbelievable, really, how it connects with people.
Brilliant. Oh, well, and I hope people will be able to check that out as well. So I assume, what is the podcast called?
It's called Hooked on Hope Recast.
Perfect. Well, and I assume it's in the usual places like iTunes and Spotify and all that.
We upload ours to a thing called Anchor, and then from there it's distributed onto everything else like BuzzFeed, Spotify, Apple, etc. So yeah, it's good. It's something that you never thought you'd do, isn't it? You never thought you'd be on radio or have your. And the internet has opened so many things up that we just now take for granted. Anybody can make media and have a voice. Sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. But like we were saying before, usually the cream rise, doesn't it? People like sharing a good thing, don't they, Pete?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it's important to us both, and it really is. And, it is a small little world, fishing. It's a great world, and there's some really super great people in it. There's, it's like a microcosm of society, really, isn't it? But it's lovely and gratifying when people take the time, as you've said, to say we've enjoyed or we're digging what you're doing, and it's really touching when you see that, isn't it?
Oh, we're not alone. You're not, when you're walking along the riverbank and you're feeling disgruntled or euphoric, you're not alone. There's loads of people feel exactly the same way as you. So when you make something that is a connection, it's brilliant. It's as good. It's nearly as good as hooking a salmon.
Yeah, nearly.
Nearly.
Yeah. And so the Hooked on Hope, each chapter is named after a song. And the first one I love because it was Funky Kingston. But do you listen to music? It strikes me that you do listen to music when you fish. And it's something I've always thought about. And I saw a guy doing it several years ago. And I thought, do you know what? I quite like the sound of that. Do you do it? And how is that to fish and listen to music at the same time?
My fishing trip of choice is to buddy up with my friend who I affectionately call Lamont in the book. And if I'm going fishing with him, I don't need an iPod. You don't need anything. It's just it's just non-stop entertainment, and so that is my fishing of choice. However, when I'm on my Todd, I have to have my iPod with me. I just absolutely love it because it allows me to enjoy my fishing non-stop. But then when you've got it on shuffle and you've got, loads of songs being shuffled around, it sparks ideas in me all the time, listening to lyrics, and that really comes through in my writing. So, and I have such eclectic music tastes. I've been going to gigs since 1984. Was my first concert, age 16. Me and my mate drove to Manchester, got 17, sorry, not 16. We hired a car and we went over to Manchester to watch the Human League, and then we were watching Susan Vega and the Smiths and New Order, and that took us to the Hacienda, and a full journey. We went to a gig a week at least. And then I got involved with putting bands on in the late 2000s. And then from that, me and my friend Matt, started a music festival called Cloud Spotting. I was involved in that until 2014, where I sold my share, and Matt and Ellen still run it now. But like I said, we had that final festival that I did. I had Kate Le Bon, the Leisure Society. So music is a massive. I'm sat here now. I've just answered the door to collect a rare Northern Soul 45 single that's just arrived that I bought off eBay. I've got over 3,500, 4,000 albums. Vinyl and music is everything to me. I'd rather listen to a book. I'd rather listen to an album than read a book. If I had a choice, if this were Desert Island Discs, it'd all be discs.
Yeah. And what is the one group? Is there the one album, the one song?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, it's too hard, isn't it? It's too hard you do it all. You make lists, don't you? My favourite, I suppose, if I've got a favourite band, it's the Beta Band, and then what came after them, the Aliens, and all the threads that came from that. Steve Mason, and John McLean went on to direct a film called Slow West, and so the ones that really speak to me creatively are the Beta Band and the Aliens, a Scottish band that even how brilliant they were, they couldn't sell enough records to be a successful band. They had to break up in the early 2000s. But creatively, they're the ones that's my go-to listen, really. But I like everything. I like reggae. I used to go to loads of festivals, War Mad and the Green Man Festival in the Brecon Beacons. So I've got a really eclectic mix. As I get older, I'm even starting to connect a little bit with jazz. But at the moment, I've got a real big thing for, if I want uplifting, I put Northern Soul on. I was too young, really, for Northern Soul. My brother was he's 10 years older than me. I inherited all his records, when he went digital and bought CDs. And I collected everything and kept everything. And even now, my kids, we regularly dance in back room to Northern Soul records, all of us, and same with reggae and everything. So I never say this is my one thing, this isn't my thing, but I'll have a listen to everything. I've sat at a stage at Warmad listening to Mongolian throat warblers, so I'll listen to anything. So it's a massive important thing in my life, and there's nothing uplifts you better than a record, is it?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And it's lovely seeing, as people who are publishing books and magazines, that vinyl has made this amazing comeback, really, isn't it? Over the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, and it's been really cool to see that. And it seems as though with magazines as well, and I know when we brought and your independent book market as well, I think is similar, that when we brought the magazine, that I didn't look at the fishing magazine market, I looked at the independent magazine market, and that seems to be doing great. And it's similar to podcasts, that people are releasing stuff. It might be one a year, it might be 2 a year, it might be like us, 4 a year. The people are doing these things, and there's a really thriving, there's magazine shops out there now, and it's really cool to see that, isn't it?
Well, people are cutting their overheads down so that they can all they need to do is not be a smash hit success. It just needs to be sustainable, doesn't it? So for that, there's loads of people doing limited runs of vinyl, pressing 1,000 magazines here and 500 records there. There's a real DIY punk ethic going on at the moment, and it's brilliant to see. Everyone can make and create things, and it's fabulous to see. Very exciting, And
so, writing. It sounds as though, have you got something else in the pipeline? Are you working on something now?
Yeah, I'm trying to write a book that I've had rattling around my head for about 10 years, and it's a book based in Blackburn, my hometown, and we are in Blackburn. We have a really polluted river called the River Darwen, and because of the Blackburn's cotton heritage and factory heritage, this river went from being a fantastic sea trout and salmon river in the late 18th century, 19th century, to being completely dead for next 100 years. But thanks to the Ribble Rivers Trust and several other organisations, it's come back to life, and legislation, so people can't just dump all the shit in a river anymore. So the factories have been brought to bear, and there's less industry in Blackburn. So a byproduct of that has been this little river coming back to life, and it's the centre of my next book, which is a book about a family that's impacted by a terrible tragedy in their life. And this little river is a ray of hope for that family. And in the centre of it is a character who's just a trout fisherman fly fishing on the river, and he becomes an inspiration for this family who has had a terrible run of really tragic bad luck. So the book's hopefully it's got a working title called Lifesaver, and it's about love, pollution, and hope, and how even in the darkest of times, there's still hope that things can return to what you consider normal, really. So it's not my normal thing, and I'm having to learn some new skills with my writing voice and how it's going to pan out. But I'm really enjoying writing it, and hopefully I've flashed it out enough now where I know the structure of it. Getting back to once I twigged I was going to make it over a season, I've flashed it out and fleshed it out enough. There's enough meat on the bones now for me to actually finally finish it. So I'm really excited about that, and I hope that that'll have a bit of another appeal. But again, I hope it speaks to people about living a bit slower and being cultivating friendships, cultivating relationships, and being more of a part of your environment.
That's really cool. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing when that one's out, and I'll be buying a copy when that's due out. When do you hope to have that out?
I'd hope to have it out for December of this year. There's one thing about the current pandemic is that us procrastinators have got no excuses not to write anymore. My business has ground to a resounding halt. I cannot say I do not have time to write this book. It's all I have got.
Well, I look forward to very, very much to that one. I was going to ask you, one of the questions I had here is, are you loving salmon fishing as much as ever? I think we know the answer to that one.
It's absolutely everything. It's everything to me. I'm going to try and make myself a better sea trout angler. I'm going to try and embrace wild trout fishing a little bit more. I'm going to have to scale down. I've only got a 7-weight rod. I've got nothing smaller than a 7-weight Pete. So having read all fly culture and seeing all the dainty things that are going on, I'm like I feel like Elmer Fudd with a fucking blunderbuss. So that's my trout rod, my sea trout rod, my Stillwater res rod, and now my river rod. So I'm going to have to scale down a little bit, but I'm looking forward to all that. But I'm still the people who I go fishing with, the river, the outdoors is everything to me, really. Excluding family life and friendships. So the bug for salmon fishing isn't going anywhere. And hopefully, the way I look at it is I've got about another 25 years to really revel in it, and I can't believe how lucky I am.
Well, keep enjoying it. And if we had to drag you away from when your next book, or even these ones as well, suddenly get bought up and you become the next J.K. Rowling or whatever it is, where's your dream destination if we can drag you away from the Ribble? Where is it you would love to go?
there's a club on the River Ribble called Clitheroe Anglers, right? And it's like manicured fishing, right? And it's where you go to die as a salmon fisherman, right? And for 2 years, they've not accepted my application form, right? Finally, they've accepted my application form, Pete. So next year, I might be in Clitheroe Anglers. So that is my dream. I mean, it's like last of the summer wine up there, right? I can be on the river in 2 minutes. They've even got a hut, Pete. They've got a hut and 15 named salmon pools, best fly water on Ribble. So that is where I want to end up. But, however, if I had to, tarpon fishing on fly. How good does that look? When one of them explodes and they're in a kayak, or whatever. Costa Rica, is it? Or Belize, is that where they go for them?
Yeah.
That'd be really hard to turn down. I was, about 20 years ago, I happened to be on holiday in Boca Grande, and they have the World Tarpon Fishing Tournament there. And I saw it all unfold in front of my eyes. I wasn't part of it. I was on the beach watching it, and with all the captains and everybody. And what a powerful fighting fish that is. So the thought of getting one of them on a fly rod, those photographs you had in, I think it was the last edition or the edition before, it's potent, it's powerful, and everything that you see on YouTube, that'd be hard to turn down. That's a bucket list thing, really. Definitely.
It is one of those ones. It's interesting as a salmon angler you say that, and I think the article you're talking about is the one Pete McLeod wrote, and I asked him to do a comparison between salmon and tarpon, and the reason for that was that they sort of fish that you count in takes, jumps. You don't land so many as well. They're pretty hard to hook and actually land. That there is a comparison. So it's kind of interesting that you're, going down that route as well. It's not an easy one to catch. So
No.
I think that's one fish I would probably get something for too as well.
Yeah, definitely. There's not a lot. I used to aspire to wanting to go to the Kola Peninsula and all that lot. And then, Lamont and I were sat on a bench one day, and he just said, well, if we went, what would that do to our river? Could you go back? Can you go back to, if you've had 20 salmon in a week and it's been ridiculous, can you go back? And I like the simple pleasures, I'm happy not catching fish. Just the prospect of maybe catching one is enough for me. Don't get me wrong.
Here.
The adventure of it all sounds intoxicating. But I know what I've got. I've got everything I want on my doorstep, and I absolutely love it. And sat with one of your best friends doing what you love is the pinnacle, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you on that. And, I'm the same. My home river, it's never going to be a big name river. The tour, we had 84 salmon last year, but I'll still put in the hours. And the trout fishing's great as well. I enjoy that. We had a lot of sea trout come through for us anyway. Last year, there was about 250 caught after a bad year the year before. And it has everything I need. I don't need to go chasing fish anywhere else. It has everything I want from it. And I think I barely fished anywhere else last year. I did some fishing up country when I was recording some podcasts and tagged some grading fishing on. But I don't think I fished anywhere else other than the tour last year. It was just amazing. Actually, I fished the Tamar, which is the border river with Cornwall and Devon. And I went there once or twice, and that's it. That's it, the tour for me.
Yeah, isn't it lovely that you can arrive at that place in your life? Because it certainly wasn't always that for me. I mean, a wiser man than me said to me that there's three phases. There's catch the most, catch the biggest, and then just glad you're out. And I'm out, and I'm now at glad you're out stage, And I think the sooner you get to that, the happier you are as a person. It's fabulous having a lens on these other types of fishing and the people who are, born fishing, and there's so many different avenues you can go with a fly rod and excitement, but there's also a real comfort in knowing what you've got and really, really loving it, and so it's nice to hear that you're not that dissimilar. You've reached that point in your life where you know what you want, and you know what you want. You know how to get it.
Yeah. Do you think that comes with maturity as you get older?
I think so. 20 years ago, the drive, just going back to fishing on still waters, we were mental with it. We were mental with it to the point of it cost us relationships. It was an amplifier for relationships failing. It was a bolt hole for lads who were getting divorced. There were probably four of us, and we all ended up in relationships that all ended, and we had to. So it ends up being like a metaphor for things that aren't going well, because I'm getting out at way. I'm going on, I'm getting, and that's what still water fishing was for us. So when you reach a contentment in your life where everything is sorted and you've been through that mill, you've got to go through the mill, haven't you, to realise what's important. And a lot of people are going to be going through the mill now, currently, and it will, as we were saying at the beginning of the interview, it will focus them on what is really important in life, and it isn't money, and it isn't a promotion, and it isn't spending 60 hours at work not being valued, So it is all linked, and you can only be content when you've been through the mill and come through the other side, and that's not like laying it on thick. I've had no traumas in my life really that's, other than bereavements and stuff like that. But that's being said, you live long enough to realise what's important, and you get to that stage sooner rather than later. When we were growing up, our parents' goal was work till you're nearly dead, and hopefully have enough money to retire when you're 65. I don't share that outlook. I want a bit more of a holistic existence, and I think there's more and more people trying to find that balance.
Yeah. And I think, it's really nice for people to listen about the path that you've taken and how fishing's been part of that, but also the creative process has really been a big part of that in leading you in a new and exciting direction. And I know I wish you every success with this, and you deserve every success because of what you're doing. It's different and interesting, and I hope it continues, and I look forward to the very next book. I will also be looking up, I'm not going to forget that bloody Instagram picture. I'm going to go and have a look at that. I'm going to go and download the Beta Band and go and have a listen to them as well. Where can people, before we sign off, where can people buy either Terminal Chancer and or Hooked on Hope?
They're both for sale on Amazon, print on demand. Just type in the title of each book or my name and you can't not find them, really. Terminalchancer.co.uk is my website, so if anyone wants to get in touch with me and have a book signed, I can do that and post from here. But yeah, Amazon, just Hooked on Hope, and you'll get to me somehow. And they're both for sale as we speak.
Fantastic. Well, it's been great speaking to you as always, and thank you for taking the time. We've had a few technical issues with internet connection and stuff like that, which I'm going to work on. So hopefully this one comes out really well. It's been great speaking to you as always. And James, thank you for taking the time to chat to me. And I hope that Springer comes around soon for you.
Cheers, Pete, and hopefully next time we speak it'll be on a bit more nicer terms, and we've seen the end of this horrible pandemic, and we're hopefully side by side on a riverbank, and if we can make that happen, let's do it.
That sounds fantastic to me. Well, I'm well up for that. Well, thank you so much, and thanks to everyone for listening. This has been the Fly Culture Podcast.
The Fly Culture podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly print magazine. For more information, please visit flyculturemag.com. You can also find Fly Culture on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter.